See, I work after that. I actually got the app on my phone. And then after that, I did a 21-day Facebook Live challenge.
We're live.
We're live.
So we're streaming at Facebook right now?
Just go for it. Facebook, right?
Hey, Facebook. My name is Alexander. I'm here in a workshop, and we're talking about responsibility and accountability during a 90-day planning session. We're testing out some new tech. We're going to talk to you guys. We're going to talk to the students in the room. And really, this is just a big experiment. So thanks for joining in. Thanks for watching this video if you're on replay. Let's see how it goes together. So I'm also going to just take a second and share it here. I should get a notification or something, right? I lost my Wi-Fi. That's good.
Yeah, it seems to time out after a while. So.
Probably because you're streaming video to the internet.
No, it just times out after a while.
Okay, I'm not going to share it then.
You just need to remake your credentials. That's all.
Really? No, it's like, because you're streaming to it. I'll just deal. So, accountability and responsibility. These two words fuck up a lot of business owners, and really everybody. So I'm going to define them, and then we're going to walk through a process where we discover where accountabilities currently live within our organization, because as business owners, we have an objective, and it is to our best interest to achieve our goal of spending more time in the market, to absolve ourselves of responsibilities and accountabilities that keep us inside the operating company. Okay? The Rockefeller Habits have a stated objective for every business owner or business ownership group, and that objective is to spend 80% of your time in the market. And so what that means is vendor relationships, direct marketing to your customers, spending time with prospects, performing product research, attending industry events, learning about the market itself, learning about different products or services that are available to you. Everything that's out there in the world that you can then bring back into the company and the culture and use to transform your organization to be more in alignment with your goals and your objectives. So the key distinction between accountability and responsibility is this. Accountability can only be assigned to one person, whereas responsibility can be many people contributing. Meaning, responsibility means having an ability to respond, having an ability to contribute. An accountable party can recruit or delegate certain objectives to one or many other people, and one or many other people can be responsible for helping to achieve those objectives, take those actions, and do the things that are necessary in order to achieve a goal, or achieve a statistic, or improve your numbers, etc. But only one person can be accountable, or nobody is. There's a statistic that basically says if there's a fire or a rape or some kind of public incident, that the probability of one person who knows they're the only person witnessing it to call the police or call the fire department is really, really high. It's like in the 90%. But the minute there's two people and they're cognizant of each other, that statistic drops to like less than 30%. Because two accountable parties believe the other party's accountable. And the nature of accountability is that it comes with weight. It's a burden of accountability. It's something you have to keep in your mind monitoring. Does that make sense? Unless you've somehow manifested a system that you know to be 100% responsible and accountable to triggering an alert, the accountable party ends up carrying in their mind that short list or that long list of all the things they're worried are or are not happening within or without the organization. How many of you can relate to that? Right? If you haven't explicitly assigned an accountability to somebody else, you cannot let it go from your mind. It's impossible, and you just won't. Does that make sense? How many of you have delegated something, but a week, a month, or a quarter, or many months later, you're realizing that you're the person that has to check in on if it was done or not? You know what I'm talking about? That means you've assigned a responsibility, not an accountability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that just brought something amazingly huge for me. Is I'm accountable for absolutely everything.
You are, and you're about to see that on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I just realized that I'm making so many people responsible for everything. But in the end,
they're bringing the paper back to you. Hey, I did it almost good enough. Is it good enough? No? Okay, better go back. Okay, I did it almost good enough. Is it good enough? No? Okay, better go back. Or even worse, they just do it, maybe you don't know about it. Or they didn't do it and you don't know about it. Then you figure out because your customer calls you. Now who's accountable? You or the customer? How many of you like it when the customer's accountable? It's a real good feeling. Like, oh, fuck, I didn't ship the thing. Right? How many of you have too many accountabilities? You can't keep track of them all. That's the thing. So for you to escape your business, for you to have that ability to leave the business and not have it fall apart, has nothing to do with responsibilities. Properly assigned responsibilities are a result of properly assigned accountabilities. So I'm going to give you a short list that I'm just going to rattle off. This isn't comprehensive in any way of all the things that have to have an accountability assigned explicitly, because if it's not assigned explicitly, it's assigned to you implicitly. Does that make sense? Any KPI you've ever defined in your company, you're accountable to. Any line item on your balance sheet, you're accountable to. Any asset you've purchased, like a computer, literally, as an asset, a car, a building, you're accountable to. Every employee you've hired, you're accountable to. Any role you've defined, you're accountable to. Any system or process you've created, you're accountable to. Any task you delegate, you're accountable to. Any order you've placed, any vendor bill payment you've made, any agreement you've opened, any virtual asset you've generated, any website you've built, any video you've manifested, any messaging or cultural items that you want to make sure people are following. Can you see that the list gets out of control really, really quickly? And how many of you are generating new assets, let's call them, that require accountability like every fucking day? Every day. You're like, here's a thing I made, here's a thing I made, here's a thing I made, here's a thing I made. Hey, have you seen these things I made? ManyChat is an accountability, right? Anytime you go on the internet, you type your username and password into a box, you open a new account, you sign up for a new service, you sign up for a box service where you get a toothbrush every month and you forget to cancel it. Those are accountabilities. You have a child, guess who's accountable to it, right? Literally, the minute you pop something into existence, anytime you birth a new idea, that idea, you're now accountable to. Or you have to be comfortable with it dying. How many of you understand? How many of you beat yourself up when you let shit die? Right? So the problem is, unless you know for certain that every time you manifest a new asset, all of those things I just listed, they're assets. That's why I consider us an asset management company, right? We parachute in all the time into companies who are like, help me figure out my Facebook shit, right? And I end up having to dig through 35 or 40 different accounts, emails, passwords, items, logins, this, that, every fucking other thing. 18 email accounts on this computer, email accounts nobody knows where it's forwarding, computers that are fucking turned off, running workflow rules that aren't happening, batch routines that aren't doing backups, data that's been stored over here that nobody knows about, messaging that's totally incorrect, addresses that are wrong. All that stuff is the result of a business owner going like this. Just want to manifest things, man. You know what I'm talking about? We all have that compulsion. I don't want to be accountable to it. I just want to invent it, you guys. Right? But then if you don't have enough people, and you're not direct in assigning accountabilities as you're generating those things, you end up with debt. How many of you can relate to that? Debt is more than financial, right? You have IT debt. Software development debt is a real thing. If you write code and you don't comment your code, and then nobody else knows what code you commented, then you shortcut your code to solve a problem, you shortcut that code to solve a problem, you shortcut that code to solve a problem, you shortcut that code to solve a problem, now you get to a point where you have to do a whole rewrite. That's called software development debt, right? There's a thing called business development debt, which is all this bullshit you've manifested that you've never assigned, never wanted to be accountable to because your values don't like align with it, right? You have to pay that debt down eventually. It will catch up to you. It'll catch up to you when you go to dissolve your business. It'll catch up to you when you start to do your legacy planning. It'll catch up to you when you start to do your exit. It'll catch up to you when you want to change your IT service provider. It'll catch up to you when you realize you don't own your own website and your domain name is held hostage by your fucking web developer, right? Every time you've done a creative asset, who here can give me the source files for their logo right now? Where do those source files live? That's an asset. You paid someone to design it. If you don't have the source files, now you have to pay someone to recreate it. Right? All of these things are accountabilities. Someone has to be in charge of them. One person per accountability. And I bet if we were to itemize everyone in your business, there'd be thousands. And I know that because we do everything in our power to itemize them. We itemize every digital asset we touch. We have thousands of items in our documentation system that are necessary for us to be able to do our job. And then our customers go and change the fucking passwords all the time. They never tell us about it. Right? So then they're like, fix my fucking website. And I'm like, well, guess what? I can't log into your Stripe account. You changed your password. I can't log into this thing. You changed your password. Who's accountable to this, me or you? Oh, you haven't decided? Fine, it's you then. Fuck it. Right? Like that's the position you put people in when you just think that accountabilities are no big deal. But what I've realized in having this discovery is that as I become absolutely clear that when I'm delegating something, so Jennifer came over here and she's like, hey, Alexander, I would really like to take a photo after lunch. I'd like to have a group photo after lunch. And I said, great, good idea. She's trying literally to lob me a ball of accountability. Can you see that? Why did you come tell me that? I want Alexander to be accountable to the photo, right? And if I'm not cognizant of that, I'd be like, okay, sure. Now she thinks I'm accountable. Can you see that? Yeah. And we all do that nonstop. We're all slippery fucking watermelons. Like, you can't grab onto it. You're like, you want this? No, fuck it. Don't. I was like, great idea. Can you be accountable to reminding me, please? Because I'm not going to remember. That's where knowing yourself is critically important. Knowing your values are critically important because it would be wise to accept accountability according to where you know your attention is automatically going to go. How many of you understand that? If you don't follow your attention for the truth and you're living according to a fantasy or an injected authority figure trying to be somebody you're not, you're going to take on accountabilities you can't properly care for. How many of you understand that? That is the death of a company. Because every time you have to figure out someone who was meant to be accountable but wasn't, you created a friction scenario. And friction leads to entropy, and entropy leads to death.
So whenever I'm assigning any task, unless it's implicitly assigned, if it's not, I have to be clear saying,
who's accountable to this?
This is your task. Can you be accountable to completing this? And like make it very clear that they accept that.
Like that, and yes, and how do you know it's been done? Because there's an accountability there too.
Okay, yeah.
Right? They can have an accountability to it, meaning they have to check in if it's done or not. But the person immediately above them needs to know they're doing all their accountabilities. So let me draw a picture. Warren, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here's the structure of my company. Alexander, the visionary, lives here. Clear? I hold the values and the context for the entire organization. Technically, this is my role as the investor. Does that make sense? I expect the company to be accountable to the results I want in my life. Does that make sense? So Lanny, I would put you there, right? You're holding the company accountable as an investor to making sure it produces the outcomes it should as an organization for the investor. Within the company, we have an operator, and that operator reports to the investors. That may be a board, right? There might be intermediaries here, but this system holds the organization accountable. Does that make sense? So the president or the operator or whatever reports to the investors. The investors have their criteria that say you're doing a good job or you're not. Simple enough. This operator, which in my case is Everett, then has departments under management. So I have a design department, I have an IT department, well, design projects, let's say. I have an IT department, I have a sales department, let's say I have a marketing department. There's more departments. But now each of these departments has a head. In this case, project management, Christine is accountable to. IT, John is accountable to. Sales, Mike is accountable to. Marketing, nobody's accountable to. Can you see I have issues with marketing in my company? Fair? Okay. Technically, I'm accountable to this because nobody else is. Automatically, my name goes there. I haven't assigned it to anybody else. Now, each of these departments has teams. And so within this department, let's say the tech services department, I have John, Everett, and Alex. Now, this is where things get fucky, right? Because now Alexander, as an IT person, accountable to John, who's accountable to Everett, who's accountable to Alex, has real potential to fuck things up. How many of you can see that? It's really easy for me to rob John of his accountability. So as much as it's necessary for people to honor and action their own accountabilities, it's equally as important for those who are not named as accountability to not fuck with it. How many of you can see that? Because it's in John's nature. He knows I live up here. He's not stupid. He gets it. His brain computates. Alexander's the leader and the boss. When Alexander tells me to do something, it's his role as the boss that he's doing that in. Right? And so he'll do things. This is John's way. He'll be like, Alexander, I've got this issue. I haven't been able to solve it. And so what I've learned is to be like, that's great, Johnny. What's he trying to do there?
Accountability for it.
And so we force it to be explicit. John, are you asking me to take this over? Right? And that requires that I'm confident enough to demand that he's confident and humble enough to receive it, and that we're willing to be equals in discussing and translating those specific communications that allow for it to be stated, Alexander is now accountable to this service ticket. Does that make sense? So the key here is to identify the role, the department, and identify where in the hierarchy does the accountability live? Who's the stated named accountability? Because John reports to Everett. Listen, if I don't do that ticket he assigned me to, am I going to call myself out on it? Or does now he have the right to call me out?
He does.
What if he assigns me and I forget? It's his job to remind me. That's the accountable party. The accountable party does the reminding. The accountable party says this was done or wasn't done. It's not morals and ethics. It's just this was assigned to you. It's still not done. Okay, I'll get to work. Does that make sense? So, in a hierarchy of roles and departments, this is how accountability looks. In your company, there's two separate components which are sort of overlapping, which is what we're going to complete now, which is that there are processes and there are functions. And in many ways, they're the same. So for example, there's a sales function in the company, but then you may also have a sales process or a sales system. Does that make sense? So I'll define these two things for you. More specifically, I'll define what a process is. Every company has 7 to 9 major operating processes that are like machines of their own that are all necessary to be functioning in order for the organization to exist. Okay? And in my world, that means I have a sales process that needs to be running. We have a marketing process that needs to be running. We have an IT service and support system that's running. We have a projects system that's running. We have a financial and accounting system that could be broken down further. Like maybe you don't put financial, maybe you have a collections system, right? Versus an accounting administration system, right? Every organization breaks down their major processes in their own unique way. So what I'd like you to do right now is write out quickly what are the 7 to 9 major processes in your organization that are running in order to keep your business going, right? And so I want you to look for the fulfillment process. You have one or many, right? So you guys do training, correct? So one of your systems or processes in the company is flight training. But you also do surveying and like volumetric scanning and like 3D surveying and that kind of stuff. That service or fulfillment area is a process. And a different party can be accountable to those two different parts of the company, even though they're both part of how you fulfill your product to the marketplace. Does that make sense? So you guys have estimating as a process, right? Then you have like home construction, like the building of the house. That's probably one big ass process. Then you have warranty. That's one big process, right? So each of these processes, yours would be safety consulting, the ongoing safety consulting thing, that's a process. Whereas audits would be a different process. Does everyone understand where I'm going with this?
Is this the should or is?
Is. These are processes that exist right now in your company.
Accountability person, is that who should be?
Who is right now accountable to it. And this is where many of you are going to realize my name is in every fucking box. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay, go. Right. No, I'm not coming there. How's the Facebook Live going? Is it streaming?
Monthly consulting audits, those are processes.
Yes.
Cash is process.
Yeah.
Collections, billing collections.
Yep. Totally. You have yours? Oh, you've got it already all documented. With accountabilities assigned? EOS is a derivative of this same framework. Spitting, because EOS was run by EO, which is built by the same guy that does Gazelles.
They do with these processes, there's 3 key ones.
Yep.
Sales, operations, and accounting.
Yeah.
And then basically
You break it out?
operations would be like for us, it's pre-construction, construction, warranty,
Yep.
estimating, purchasing, and then of course our accounting is, AR, PR, or accounts receivable.
Yeah, CR, AP, AR, we just call cash flow. So we bring it up a level. But exactly. And as the organization grows, guys, you're going to subdivide processes. Just like that. Perfect. You would do one of these for each company. Yep. Yep. Well, all of them end up combined at that board level where you identify as Steinbach, right? So ultimately, each company is going to layer up, and then you're going to have accountabilities at that top end as well. So you kind of have 4, like 3 and then another one.
Right. Okay.
Choose your favorite for today.
How much are these on? Are they on?
Do you want more?
No, where are they? Where do these go on here?
There's another form. This one. So this is functions. This is processes.
Oh, okay, got that.
Yeah. So Fabiola, yours would be
Are these in order?
Facebook funnel. The marketing system is a system or a process.
Okay, currently?
Yeah. Well, because your thing is like now just manifest. So I'll give you yours. The marketing funnel, like what we would call the funnel. Yeah. You have one called, let's call it the funnel. That's a process, right? Which is how do we attract new customers into the program. Then you have the discovery call sales process. That's a cycle. Then you have the program itself, which is a system, right? Then you're ultimately going to have a process called customer service. How do you deal with customer complaints or refunds? Like, how do you deal with that type of stuff? Probably have a planning process, a planning and strategy process. Yeah.
So I have an accountant doing my financials, but however, I realize that I just need to be trained on it. Not trained on it, I just need to understand enough that I can do the numbers, but she's not as an investor.
She'll never be accountable. So right now she's responsible, you're accountable. If you internalize it, now you just end up responsible and accountable. But in both cases, you're the accountable party because she reports to you.
So can I put an R by her name and put accountable?
Because she's not accountable at all, just put her.
If I ask her to pay her, I pay her $600 an hour, she'll be accountable. It's easier for me to massage her files, get it back to make sure I got formulas across that, make sure they're correct. I'm not an expert in Excel.
Yeah, well, I think you should be accountable to your own money.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, like Jamie's 100% responsible for all of our accounting administration.
What?
But I'm accountable.
Right.
She reports to me according to my standards what it is I want, and I know if we're out of band or not.
Okay. Can you have sub accountability? So I'm accountable for my financials. She's accountable to make sure my formulas are correct.
Yes, exactly.
Monthly consulting, audits, WCB claims, writing manuals and procedures, would those all be processes or would those be under client fulfillment process?
Client fulfillment, hierarchically, all of those things are subdivisions of it.
Right.
So,
Process is client fulfillment.
correct. Yes, Jordy.
So what I have so far is lead generation, sales, creating the sales funnel, still creating that.
That's a task, not a process.
Okay.
Because you're building it. Once it's done, it's done. You're building a process. It isn't a process.
Okay.
But you are accountable to that as a task. That would be more like a 90-day rock than it would be a company process.
Okay. All right. So the technical support for my company of building these things, but also
Yep.
ongoing.
Yep.
Then of course the one-on-one coaching currently.
Yep.
And program creation. That's going to be an ongoing thing.
Great. Always improving it. So then it's a process. So one item that he came up with that you and I didn't come up with is tech.
Right, yeah, I was thinking about it.
And you can put our name there because we're accountable to it.
In our business with the installations we do, is that also considered a process? Or?
Yes. Yeah. And you could break it out. Dealership installations, retail installations, or if they're exactly the same in terms of a process, you just have installations, but then you might have a process called retail sales versus wholesale sales, right? Depending on how you line those things up.
Is there anything else I'm missing?
It's pretty close. You'll figure it out.
Kind of blending processes with the functions, though, like as far as like.
Yeah, that's fine. Like you're probably going to blend marketing, you're probably going to blend sales.
Like I've got my HR process, the HR is a department, but at the same time there's bringing the employee on versus signing up for the benefits.
HR is a good example. Everybody, who here has a company client or a company employee onboarding process? When a new employee joins your company, do you take them through a standardized process of cultural indoctrination and training? If you do, employee onboarding is a process. HR is a function. Does that make sense? Same with client onboarding. And now make sure, for every process you've written down, put the name of the person currently accountable.
This, what we're doing.
Yes.
It's a process.
90-day strategic planning, or the strategic planning process, is a process, correct?
Company strategic planning.
Correct, is a process, yep.
But now in a partnership where strategic planning is clearly 50-50, we're both doing it, we're both, whatever.
Who's accountable?
Who's only, well, we're both.
No, you're not.
I know they're going to be on one, but we're both equally invested.
You're equally responsible. You're both equally contributing, but one of you carries the torch that says it's done or not done. So here's how that looks. When you decide you're scheduling it here and Kelly's like, I'm feeling kind of sick, you get to be like, okay, I'm just holding you accountable, that means this isn't going to happen, and you need to be okay with that. You don't get into morals and ethics. It's just, okay, Kelly, but if this does happen, then X, Y, Z occurs. The accountable party is the person who says that.
It's the firefighter, the fire example, that two parties, it's going to go down significantly unless one person owns it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You waving at me?
I don't know if I have process or tasks.
Tell me what you got.
I chose a hotel.
Okay.
So I've got like sales.
Yeah.
I have social media.
Yeah.
I have housekeeping.
Yeah.
Customer relations.
Yeah.
Accounting. Maintenance. Those things are all processes.
They're processes. They happen on a cycle or a rhythm. They're always in perpetuity. A task would be, how do we improve the maintenance system by doing X, Y, Z that can be started and stopped and then it's permanently done? How do we upgrade all of our computers once to make everybody more efficient? Those are tasks. The use of the computers to deploy customer service is a process. Yeah.
So, I think you guys were just discussing that we can't have more than one person accountable.
Cannot.
What if we do now?
You don't. One of you is the one that is thinking about it and aware of it being broken before the other.
So we should assign, or actually this is an exercise to assign.
Honor the truth first. Everybody, honor the truth. When you're putting down a name, put the name as it is right now. Do not put who it should be. That's the type of thing that we could do as a 90-day rock, is we're going to transition accountability for the accounting from X person to Y person this quarter. Do not put fantasies on these papers. So who is the actual person monitoring it actively more than the other today?
So it may not be the person actually doing it,
No, the person doing it is just contributing responsibility.
but the person that's like, this...
Was it done? Was it done? Was it done? Was it done? Yeah,
That would be the accountable person.
correct. So here's a really great example of accountability in a human behavioral context, okay? I want to share this with you. You have two people in a relationship who are subordinate and addicted to each other. How many of you know relationships like that? They're volatile. Lots of people live in relationships like that. Okay, here's what happens. The one person owes the other person at this moment in time, and they're needing to make up for something. So they're like, honey, I promised to do this bullshit I actually don't want to do, but I'm making up, so I'm going to promise it. Okay? Take out the garbage tomorrow. Now, because of values, who's going to be noticing if the garbage was taken out or not? The person who made the promise or the person that they're trying to please? The person they're trying to please. So then here's what happens. The person who's trying to do the pleasing isn't accountable because they don't even fucking notice the garbage until the person who isn't accountable points it out to them and blames them for it and then puts them in the doghouse again. How many of you can see that? So there's tons of circumstances in life and in business where accountabilities are misassigned, and the truly accountable person is getting even with that person by knowing they're accountable and letting them fail. How many of you understand what I'm saying here? They literally wait until you fucked it up to tell you. That person is the accountable party. Does everyone understand?
Even though the other person was...
Responsible. Right. The problem is they're conflated words in our society. We've conflated the terms, right? So we assign, listen, I have no problem taking the garbage out. Jen just has to be humble enough to recognize she's accountable and remind me. Just get out of your fucking pride and be okay with reminding people. People who are self-righteous, who are holding an accountability, like step out into the world expecting, you should do this and I shouldn't have to remind you. How many of you know someone like that? Mothers do this shit all the time. I shouldn't have to remind you. It should be important to you. But it's not. That's the thing. And if we can just step out our judgment of the fact that it isn't important, it's not important. It's on the list of the 4 fucking things that are important to me. I'm probably not going to remember it otherwise. That's who I am. My attention goes there. Unless someone else with a different set of values draws my attention to that. Lovingly, by communicating in terms of my values, would be best. Does that make sense to everybody? If you want somebody to do something for you, communicate it in terms of their values, and then they'll open up to it. And if you can actually show it to them in a way that it's meaningful and important, they have a higher probability of being able to be accountable. How many of you understand? You can't be accountable for something you're not able to notice. If you're blind, you can't tell people if something's on fire 3 miles away until the smoke shows up, right? But what happens first, vision or scent? You can look at someone across the room, they're hot. You get within 2 feet and they smell bad. Anyway, keep working. Are we done? Have you assigned names? Who doesn't have names in all the boxes? Okay, write your names. Honor the truth. Don't make it moral.
You said assign accountability, not responsibility.
Accountability. Notate the current accountability. No fantasies, not who it should be. Who is it right now?
Me.
Yeah. Now you're like, oh, I see, I bear the whole weight of this. Because we're all living in fantasies thinking, someone else will rescue me from this. Nobody's showing up to take accountability from you except me, because I know I can get paid for it. That's my secret. And let me tell you something else. You want to be paid handsomely for something? Volunteer to be accountable. People pay me because I'm accountable. I fuck things up all day long. Like in terms of responsibility, I do not get a blue ribbon. Okay, I don't. I forget tickets, I forget tasks, I forget communications, I forget to respond to people, I forget all of that stuff. But I do not drop my accountability to those people. I show up and I say, I fucked this up, but it's going to be better. And one of our core values is we embody incremental progress. Because I know that's I know that's who I am. I'm a person who is never going to give up, not the person who's going to get it perfect the right time or the first time, right? So like our landing page is a great example. I said, listen, it's going to be great, but we're going to iterate, right? But the whole world is obsessed with, it wasn't perfect the first time you showed it to me. And I'm like, calm down. Give us feedback. Express your interests. Tell me what you want better. I'm not ashamed of it. I'd love for you to have an input of the house you're building. I'd love for you to have input on the business you're building. Like, don't just expect me to build your business for you without input. I'll be accountable, but you're responsible and I'm going to hold you to that. Does that make sense? And that allows me to iterate where other people get stuck in perfection, right? Because as long as you're willing to remain accountable, it's like I said to Warren, the only way this is going to fail is if one of us gives up. I don't know how to fix your server when it's broken. I've run an IT company for 17 years. Let me tell you the truth. I don't fucking know what caused it to break. I don't know, and further, I don't fucking care. I don't care, and the fact that you care is mind-boggling to me. That's just whatever that is. But what I do know is I ain't stopping till it's fixed, replaced, reorientated, reconfigured, whatever, and you're back to work. That's what my customers pay me for. I don't care if you get this right the first time. I'm holding you accountable to filling the sheet out. I'm holding you accountable to applying disciplines. I'm holding you accountable to establishing routines. And I know for a fact that over time, as long as you remain responsible and someone holds you accountable, you're guaranteed to produce new results, new habits, new rhythms, new life, new beliefs, new being. That's for sure. I don't have to do anything about that. That's automatic for human beings. I'm willing to just be the guy that says, if you want a business, this is me being accountable. If you want to scale a growing company, you better fucking plan. Are you planning, yes or no? If it's a no, that's the truth. That's just life. And how you react to that is your business. But at the end of the day, my role is the role of accountability. Does that make sense? Great, we're going to switch to functions. Functions are easier because you don't have to make anything up. Just put a name in the box next to every function in the company. Who's accountable to that function?
So for that, a good affirmation I guess for myself is that I'm accountable about your IT, but you're responsible for proper and proper use and operation of your own assets.
Sure. You're accountable, which is to say that if they operated incorrectly, all you can do is show up and tell them that.
Exactly. I'll fix it, I'll manage it, but you're gonna, if it keeps on going down, you gotta operate it properly.
Yeah, and you're just accountable. Accountable means to show the data.
So this is where we should have filled that thing out.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, got it. All right, and the new one that we're doing now?
it's like the one just before it.
That one.
So every business has all these functional areas. Maybe you have a couple unique functional areas, and there's a spot at the bottom for you to put in your departments. That sheet that you're looking at right there. Just toss a name in every box. And you're going to find that your name is in a lot of boxes.
So do that now.
Do that now. Start the hardest one, head of the company. I think that this is probably a good place for us to stop this Facebook Live, Warren. So I want to thank everybody out there in the internet. If you watch this, we really enjoyed having you. Check into this page in the future for cool content, maybe, if we're so inspired to produce it for you. Are you turning it off before I'm done talking?
All the camera decided to turn off.
All right.